Evening, everyone. I'm Vikas, and welcome to the last walkthrough of this exhibition, Ambedkar through Ephemera. Conducting the last walkthrough is the most difficult part of an exhibition. This because by now you would have received so much feedback, and you wonder how you can include it in the exhibit before showing it to the next cohort. But anyway, we cannot change the exhibits now. But I'm glad to have received a lot of feedback over the last 3 days, and I look forward to feedback from you as well. The exhibition was conceptualized to bring a new archive into our discussions. And because most of the conventional historians work with archives which accommodate we look at some of the formal correspondences and but I thought it will be important to bring the everyday into the room. We encounter different public icons or different things on a daily basis. Most of these encounters are fleeting in nature. This exhibition tries to bring all the fleeting encounters under a single roof and see if they have a cumulative impact on us. So I'll begin with the walkthrough. We foreground a poster of Ambedkar, which is unlike most of the official representations of Ambedkar. A serious legal scholar or lawyer looking towards us. But this is a very different kind of Ambedkar, which you often find in the homes of people. Right? A couple of quotes from the Ephemera, which you will see here. Now let's start with the first section. The first section is, of course, the most, curates images which we encounter most often, that is portraits of Ambedkar. This is a photograph of Purna and Anand, who scaled the Mount Everest. And on Mount Everest, they unveiled the flag of India and a banner with Ambedkar and I.S. Sankaran there. Now, this is a pencil sketch of Dr. Ambedkar. The text in Gujarati here identifies him as the Messiah of the Dalits. This is a pencil sketch again of Ambedkar, but I don't have the original here, but the scan. Because children draw a lot of things every day, so one kid saw Ambedkar somewhere and very quickly sketched it out, and parents kept the scan of it but forgot to keep the original. So there was an ephemeral contact with that sketch, but I thought it would be important to see Ambedkar through the eyes of a child. This is the original of that poster. Now, the interesting thing in this is that Ambedkar was barely 13, I guess, when he got married, and Ramabai was not even a teen. Ambedkar had not yet encountered Buddhism. But when the poster maker is imagining Ambedkar, he's reconceptualizing his entire life cycle from a Buddhist perspective. So he shows Ambedkar receiving the blessings of Buddha. This is Amar Chitakatha. When we were kids, it was almost a kind of textbook for us. Everyone had to read Amar Chitakatha, right? And interestingly, the Amar Chitakatha featured Ambedkar before Nehru and Gandhi, long before Nehru and Gandhi. Before Ambedkar, only 3 20th century personalities had featured in a special issue of Amar Chitakatha. Tagore, Bose, and Ishwaran Vidyasagar. This Amar Chitakatha was issued 4 times, reissued 3 times. In 2002, but in 2002 it was captioned The Glorious Heritage of India, and then about 2012 as a Champions of Change, and then 2000 much more recently. I don't have the exact date because they haven't printed that, but now it is the caption is "He dared to fight." So the image doesn't change, but the interpretation, it is being constantly reinterpreted. Right? Now, Um, the other interesting thing in this is that in the 1970s, it was not very common to refer to Ambedkar as Baba Sahib. Right? So the decision of the Amar Chitra Katha to add Baba Sahib to Ambedkar is itself interesting. The official sources, at least the union government sources, started to refer to Ambedkar as Baba Sahib only after he received the Bharat Ratna. Right, so this is about 11 years, at least 11 years before he got the Bharat Ratna. This is an undated poster of Ambedkar. We don't know who made this, but we know that the company's name and the inscription on the margin suggests that it was mass produced. Now you see a similar image on that uh, banner in Mount Everest on Mount Everest. Right? So very popular image of Ambedkar. This is 1981 from the Tamil magazine Tamil Nadu, issued on the occasion of his birth anniversary. The back page is Ambedkar. Very fragile paper. I just took a scan instead of bringing the original here, and it refers to not here, but inside the magazine, it refers to Ambedkar as someone who stood for the cause of true brotherhood. This is a picture card of Bank of Baroda, which refers to which includes Ambedkar in a series which calls the Pride of Indian Nationalism and has Lajpat Rai, Naroji, Gandhi, Nehru, and others in series. This is most likely before he was conferred the Bharat Ratna. It's interesting that a public sector unit is engaging with him. This is an interesting poster. Another poster for we don't have the name of the designer, but we know it was mass produced, and the designer chose to have bookshelf in background. After he put the books, I guess he realized that he needs to put names. So instead of putting names of books, he just put all keywords he thought could go along with Ambedkar. So Indian law, Lord Buddha, untouchability, Indian, how to avoid caste feeling, Indian constitution. So just key phrases, key words which he believed that would go well with Ambedkar are all packed into this. So this is not a bookshelf, but rather a collection of keywords. Now, so far we've seen posters of Ambedkar, but now we are seeing Ambedkar's frame within a frame. So for a long time, the Hindi movies it seems didn't refer to Ambedkar, and I mean didn't show his portraits even when they were showing at Dalit household. Ambedkar's posters won't be there. Someone else will be in the background, maybe Gandhi or Nehru, someone else. 1985 suddenly, for the first time, Ambedkar's portrait, a framed portrait, is shown in a shot. This is Rajesh Khanna, and maybe for a few seconds, for a few fleeting seconds, the audience would have seen a new face here. I mean, I would have loved to actually ask Rajay. I mean, I didn't start the Ephemera work earlier, but if I did it, I would have actually tried to go and ask him if he turned around to see who was behind him. Right, so it would be interesting to see how. But the trend of using Ambedkar in the backdrop began in Marathi movies by Jabbar Patel. Jabbar Patel later on went on to make very well-known movie Ambedkar, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and this is a poster from. This is a very fresh image of Ambedkar. A young Ambedkar in not the familiar three-piece suit and tie, but a different, blazer, I guess, blazer, and in the background you have the Westminster Palace. I understand. It's a different Ambedkar, a fresh, a different Ambedkar. I mean, if I'm not wrong, three different posters of this movie were prepared, at least three, if not more, and this is one of them. By now, from Akhir Kyo 1985 to 2017, Jolly LLB to Ambedkar in the courtroom. So if you have been included in Jolly LLB2, then you are mainstream. This is as mainstream as you can get in the country, right? So now what has happened is that in most Hindi movies, and I guess in Tamil and other movies as well, Ambedkar invariably features in courtrooms, police stations, government offices. Right? So you have now a new kind of representation which departs from the Amar Chitkatha representation, in which they are trying to. This is a book by Tulika for children, the boy who asked why. It's very different from the Amar Chitkatha because it's using a different form of Ambedkar. Right? And this is perhaps looking at new kids who are reading manga and all these kind of comics uh, which have these kind of strokes, I guess. So they're catering to that audience now. I mean, so from when I read Arun Chitra, maybe in the 80s, or when, and from then to now, there has been a major shift in the imagination of characters like Ambedkar. This is a very interesting poster. I do not know who designed it, but this has Ambedkar engaging a child laborer and asking, giving him pencil and a book, Sikshit Bano, Aage Padho, and he shows him the way to the school, and the sun of possibilities is rising out of the school, and this is the set of possibilities which they showcase: an IPS officer, a judge, a doctor, I mean, somebody who holds a doctorate, and a sportsman. This is interesting. I included it because it shows a sportsman. Whenever we talk about Ambedkar education, everyone thinks of a lawyer or a PhD. That is the only imagination. But here, the designer imagines a sportsman also a possibility that so I think it's a new way of looking at things. Otherwise nobody associates Ambedkar with sports. This is a more recent poster of Ambedkar which I got from the Chaitya Bhumi, from a shop outside Chaitya Bhumi, which shows Ambedkar in the center of the Buddhist universe. Buddha, Buddhist Bahujan, that universe. Buddha, Ashok, Chauji Maharaj, Phule, and it collectively refers to them as Rashtra Nirmate, which is nation builders, the people who build the nation. Just a little anachronistic to associate Buddha and Ashoka with Rashtra, because the idea of Rashtra is, or the word Asian, which is translated as Rashtra in most Indian languages, is very 19th century, late 19th century, not even 19th century, actually late 19th century, early 20th century. So to associate Buddha and Ashoka with the making of the nation, it sounds a little anachronistic. So far we've seen the portraits of Ambedkar, but now we shift to calendars. I'll begin with calendars in which Ambedkar is not mentioned, and then move to calendars where he is mentioned. So 1966, the government of India, the postal department issues a calendar of stamps which would be issued in the year of 66. Ambedkar is not mentioned here. About 21st or 22nd February, around one of these dates, Chavan wrote to Indira Gandhi saying that the nation is gearing up to celebrate Ambedkar's 75th anniversary. It would be great if the union government also participated in that. It would be, you could issue a commemorative postage stamp. So Indira Gandhi was already, she had just taken, just assumed office, because, Lal Bahadur Shastri unfortunately expired in Tashkent. So she's just settling in, and she's preparing to go to America for a very crucial first foreign trip, right? So her hands are full of all kinds of problems. He wrote back that I will look into this. And 2 weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, I guess the stamp was approved, and on 14th of April, you have a postage stamp for Ambedkar. Again, 1973, the 25th year of independence of India. Ambedkar is not mentioned in the calendar of the stamps which are going to be issued, but then on 14th of April, a stamp is issued, a very crucial stamp, because in that year the entire pantheon, national pantheon, was featured in stamps. Ambedkar alone was shown in the foreground of the parliament. No other leader. This is the beginning of the intertwining of Ambedkar with the symbols of the republic, the constitution, the flag, and the parliament. And from this point onwards, this intertwining intensifies over the years, right? Until the point where he is the foremost icon of the constitutional republic in India. And they also quote him here on the FDC cachet, we must make our political democracy social democracy as well. It is almost as if the designer had an inkling of the coming problems, because after 1974 Indira Gandhi had to impose emergency, right? So it's almost as if somebody is forewarning you that that the social democracy and political democracy are not aligning with each other. The interesting thing is that on both occasions when Ambedkar is included in the pantheon, but Ambedkar, there's also some concern. He's called someone who often appeared to take extreme positions, someone who was controversial. So they recall his contributions to the making of the nation, making of the constitution, etc. But there was some kind of lingering doubt about where he fits in or he doesn't fit in. So you have this. He took extreme positions. He played a constructive role, but still he was a highly controversial figure. Almost every major leader is controversial. Who's not? Mahatma Gandhi is controversial. Everybody is controversial. If you take a stand, the moment you take a stand, then you become controversial, right? But he alone is identified as controversial. I thought that was a little odd, but by 1990, all these doubts are cleared. Now come to this post 1990 calendar. This is a calendar of the Surat Division SC/ST and Buddhist LIC Employees Welfare Association, where they feature Ambedkar here. They feature also a quote by Ambedkar on the reverse, where they talk about Ambedkar that he says. They quote him. They quote his thing that for I am of the opinion that most vital need of the day is to create amongst the mass of the people the sense of a common nationality, the feeling not that they are Indians first and Hindus, Mohammedans, Sindhis and Kanaris afterward, but they are Indians first and Indians last. If this be the ideal, then it follows that nothing should be done which will harden local patriotism and consciousness. Now, another quote from Ambedkar here. This is another calendar by the General Insurance Employees Association, which features Ambedkar on the 50th anniversary of the independence with the Parliament. Now compare these very plain calendars with these calendars, extremely colorful calendars, right? These are calendars which have mass circulation. This is the April page of Marathi calendar called Buddham Namami Din Darshika. Din Darshika. Every date has some Dalit history inscribed into it. Every date, not one cell is left empty. A lot of hard work has gone into this. This is almost like a textbook of history, right? And this is also a site for entrepreneur. There is entrepreneurship, because they're not only producing this calendar but also using the space to advertise other entrepreneurs, right? Now, but this doesn't feature some of the Bhakti saints. If you look at the standard Hindi Panchangs, there you find your Bhakti saints, Ravidas featured here. Or you have another one here where these calendars have to fill in the page. They follow a format where every bit has to be filled in. So here they say, भीषण गर्मी से छांव में भी लू लग सकती है, बचाव हेतु पर्याप्त पानी पीते रहे. Please keep drinking water, otherwise you may suffer from heat stroke or something. Great. Here they could have said नींबू पानी पीते रहो, just drink lemon water, but here they say ऊंच नीच का भेद नहीं कि जन्म नहीं पहचान, ऊंच उसको जानिए जिसके कर्म महान. Here they have put a line which questions social hierarchy. The fact that they chose to fill this space with a line questioning social hierarchy as the basis of who is high and who is low. They could have easily said, आइसक्रीम खाओ ठंडे रहोगे और नींबू पानी पियो खुश रहोगे. They could have done that. Now I do not know how many users carefully read everything here, but they chose to fill it in with this. The other important thing to note about the calendars is that I included them in Ephemera because you have a calendar only for 1 year, and you have a month's page only for 1 month. So after you turn this over, flip this over, April, you don't see the same thing. So you have a kind of ephemeral contact with it. Now, this is a Jai Bhim calendar, which has Ambedkar and everyone else, but also features Ravidas. Again, you'll see that it is filled in almost every date with some history. But if you look closely, the history there and history there are not common, because that is catering to the Marathi audience. So a lot of Marathi figures are there, and this is catering to the Hindi-speaking audience, especially from Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh and Bihar. So here you have more local names here. Right? Now this is a postal calendar issued by the Postal Department, Chief Postmaster General of Maharashtra. It has the April pages Diksha Bhumi, right? Diksha Bhumi. Now it's interesting that they have a collage of commemorative stamps, special covers, first day covers, and the pictorial cancellation of Diksha Bhumi. They also give some description of Diksha Bhumi, which takes this center stage on the page, and they say that on this day, on 14th of October, which is Ambedkar embraced Buddhism with thousands of his followers. Now, I guess the number was much larger than that. In 1973, the postal brochure for that stamp of 73 said thousands of followers, but for 2017 said lakhs of followers. So there was huge inflation from 1973. The historical facts cannot change. This is not ancient history where you don't have evidence. You got photographs of that day. You've got news reports of that day. So historical facts, at least for the contemporary history, cannot change. But here, from 73 to 2017, there was a huge appreciation from thousands to lakhs, and then again a deflation here. I don't understand how this happens, but this has happened. Now we move to a separate section, tickets. Tickets, the Asian Games, they had a stadium named Ambedkar Stadium, where football and wrestling matches were held. If you open this A1 size ticketing program, you'll find Ambedkar Stadium and the sitting plan and the timings, etc. mentioned there. Once the games are over, you have got an empty stadium. You have to do something on that. So you have programs happening, the musical programs, etc. happening there. So until you go to the venue, you'll have Ambedkar Stadium with you, the name, and you have to keep in your mind that I have to go to Ambedkar Stadium. So there's ephemeral contact there. Whether it leads to thinking, deeper thinking or engagement is something that we cannot say. Now I'll move to this and then come back here, because the 1990-91 was centenary year of Ambedkar, and the government issued a commemorative coin. He was conferred the Bharat Ratna. The Lok Sabha Secretariat, if I'm not wrong, issued a booklet on Ambedkar. Portraits were unveiled, statues were built. Also, on train tickets, in some places, Western Railways, for instance, in some places they mentioned the Bharat Ratna Baba Sahab Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Shatabdi Varsh, which is the centenary year of Dr. Ambedkar. So somebody who took the train from Jaipur to Delhi, he had this ticket Ambedkar written, inscribed on the back. So until he reached Delhi, he had this name with him. I'm not sure whether he flipped it around and thought about this. But when we were kids, we used to have these tickets, and we read the Shubh Yatra, because trains were invariably late by 4 or 5 hours. They delayed. So we'd say, what kind of Shubh Yatra is this? So we'd at least look at this and, so you have this. Now, this is a boarding pass, 2016, the 125th anniversary. On the reverse of the boarding pass, there's this Panchatirtha of Ambedkar, 5 important places associated with the life cycle of Ambedkar, and a list of in small type, a list of initiatives of the government to commemorate Ambedkar's 125th anniversary. At least on 5 different routes, I found similar boarding passes. Now let's look at this. I just thought we'll zoom into a particular ephemera and see how intense engagement is expected at some level. You have the Hanam Bhumi, the the Siksha Sthal, the Diksha Bhumi, Mahaparinaman Sthal, the Chaitya Bhumi, 5 important places associated with Ambedkar. I've tried to link them with some image from the official, corrections. And here's a list of things that they would do for the 125th anniversary. So first thing is to conserve and the 5 monuments associated with Ambedkar. The second thing is to celebrate his centenary 125th anniversary in 183 countries. This is a snapshot of Ambedkar's celebration in Birmingham 2016. They said we'll bring out stamps, we'll bring out coins, and we'll also celebrate his birth anniversary henceforth as Samrasta Divas. So you have that. There's also a commitment to put together tableaus and floats on Republic Day and such occasions. So you see one of the recent snapshots here. One boarding pass here contains reference to so many other monuments, ephemera, other things, right? The designer really intended you to read it very carefully, though I must add that the text is in very small Hindi font, and one of the persons, at least one of the persons who had this boarding pass was Tamil. Very unlikely that he would be able to read through this very small Hindi font. Now, what I've done is that I've translated some of this text in Hindi into English here. Now, from Ambedkar featuring on ticket stubs or boarding passes, now you have airports and stations named after him. And there's also an IRCTC package which covers prominent places associated with the life of Ambedkar and this heritage. This is a garden ticket pass. The garden is named Dr. Ambedkar Garden. We'll now move to a miscellaneous section where we have variety of ephemera. This is bromide, I understand, which is used to reproduce images. So these days when government has to, or anybody has to send something to news media, they just simply send a digital image. But earlier they would give bromide, and then the media houses will reproduce images from using the bromide. This is from 1973 stamp. Now after you reproduce the image, the bromide doesn't have any use. This is from the same Tamil magazine I referred to earlier, Tamil Nadu, in which they produce a quote by Ambedkar: in an ideal social system, certain rights should be universally extended to every person. There should be various open paths and opportunities for interaction with others. That is, there should be a natural place in the social system for members to participate mutually without excluding each other. This is true brotherhood. This is true brotherhood. Right? 1981, this statue of Ambedkar, by now familiar statue of Ambedkar and ubiquitous statue of Ambedkar, was quite uncommon. It was very rare to see such statues, at least in northern part of the country. I cannot say the same with confidence about Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra, but at least in northern part of country, these statues were not easy to find. This is a newsletter of the Uttar Pradesh Safai Mazdoor Sangh, mailed from Kanpur to Rajkot, and it talks about the role of Ambedkar in spreading education. See, Ambedkar as an educationist is the national imagination is always about Ambedkar as an anti-caste crusader or a constitution giver or constitution maker. But the popular imagination, Ambedkar is very closely associated with education. In his slogan of Sikshit Bano, educate, arise, and agitate, right? So that's pretty cool. So education is central to the imagination of Ambedkar. So there's a long article on his contribution to education. This is an article, a full back page of the Hindu, where the whole range of stamps and other postal stationery in Ambedkar have been curated. This was during COVID time, so most of us didn't get the hard copies, so we saw it on the digital print. and so there was I mean, we couldn't preserve the hard copy there. So I thought it will be there was ephemeral engagement here. This is a directly deposit account card in which you go to the, I mean, where you record the deposits you make at the post office, which are later adjusted against the purchase of stamps. So you make an entry here, so you also see Ambedkar here for a while. You give it back to the clerk there who then notes down things. So this is a packing label of the, I mean, this is what you find on the on stamp and packets, because it has description how many stamps are there in this. So usually when you open it, it just gets just, I mean, destroyed. But this one which I have survived that, and it gives you a lot of technical information about the stamp. So it's important from that point of view. 2023 Amrit Pex was an exhibition in Pragati Maidan. So when you entered the exhibition, people give you these handouts, pamphlets. So this has this flag of India and the stamp of India. I mean, the stamp of Ambedkar. Usually, in earlier years, this place would have been reserved for Mahatma Gandhi or maybe Jawaharlal Nehru. But here you have Ambedkar. People just most people looked at it and left it aside. But a few, maybe 50 yards or so ahead, when you entered the main gallery, main pavilion, there was a pillar with not only one but several other pillars with this and other stamps of Ambedkar. Now this is Mahatma Gandhi, Father of Nation, Flag of Nation, national symbol, national animal, national bird, national player Sachin Tendulkar, and the highest waterfalls of India, I guess, and Ambedkar. This is as mainstream as you can get in the country, in the company of peacock, tiger, flag, etc. You know, and Father of Nation. So you see that in various frames that Ambedkar is increasingly central to the way you imagine India in public space, right? With all national symbols and other things. Now this is an old blog spot of the CST Employees Welfare Association, where they reproduce a quote by Ambedkar on the conflict between the Arthashastra and Dharmashastra, and how the uh, uh, how the fact that Arthashastra lost out to the Dharmashastra had a long-term impact on the country. Because in the moment you anchor the laws or norms in the Dharmashastra, they become unchanging because your divine laws cannot change. So that had an impact on the dynamism of the society. This is a recent tweet on Ambedkar on the 14th of April. And nowadays, a lot of departments on key such days, put out tweets. I so far seen the public imagination of Ambedkar. Let's move to the personal private spaces. And I call this section personal as political. This is a Jai Bhim gift envelope. At least in North India, in most weddings, when people have to make a cash gift to the bride and groom, they place it in an envelope and give it to the bride and groom. Now, this one is called Jai Bhim Shubhkamna Sahit, with best wishes, and has Ambedkar inscribed in every bit. Jai Bhim is packed with different images of Ambedkar from different points in his life cycle. Now, how did the bride and do the bride and groom really pay attention to this? There's a long queue of people standing to give them a gift. They're already tired. There's somebody standing next to them, and this new person comes, the bride or the groom. One of them at least doesn't know who this is. So they'll introduce that this is, earlier wale chacha ke tao ki behan ki beti, and he says, my God, I'm already, flown. Yeah, thank you. Just say thank you. And they take the gift and give it to somebody else. So maybe half a second or second, they look at what is it, but they're so tired that they cannot really get into that. Now, then later on, somebody else opens this envelope, so they don't get to see it then either. So maybe the person who's giving it is the one who has the maximum engagement with it. But this is a kind of ephemeral contact. This is a message of Ambedkar in a page kept inside a wedding invitation. Right? This is another wedding invitation designed by the groom himself, which has the entire Dalit pantheon on it, and an anti dowry message. On the back of this page, you have this Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao official logo there, and the preamble of the Constitution. Right, very intense engagement with the Constitution, with your politics. So the line between the personal and political isn't very clear here. This is another wedding invitation card where the bride and groom belong to Maurya community, so the Ashok is foregrounded here. This is yet another fund which shows Swami Vivekanand, Bajpayee, and other icons. Now shift from these wedding invitation cards to invitations to protest or political conferences or civil society conferences, and you see the same pantheon here. Zoom into this, you'll see local elements. So this is from Bengal. So Yogendranath Mandal is centrally placed here. This is from Jammu and Kashmir. So Sir Chotu Ram, a major leader from Northwest India, is featured here. So you see, the format is more or less same. The entire pantheon is shown. The pantheon varies from place to place, but and concerns under listed under that also vary. Ambedkar is a fixed point, and other things keep changing. Now we'll move to another section which is called political economy. This is a shop outside Bhumi which sells Ambedkar literature and newspapers as well, a little bit of that. Now, until 1990s or the advent, in fact, until 2012 or so, until the advent of these digital technologies, social media, our invitation cards used to be very bland. This is an invitation card for Ambedkar Jayanti, with the Chief Minister was supposed to attend. Just simple declaration, of the date, time, place, etc. But look at these new ones, very colorful, full of images, right? And they have standardized it in a way, and you can place your own local mohalla icons here. So you have this template, and you plug in your mohalla icons here, and because it's Maharashtra, so Hadge Baba Shivaji are here. And they call the Ambedkar Jayanti as the world's biggest festival. Okay. Now look at this one. It's a sort of different part of India, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar border, in that area. So here you have different political and social context. Kanshi Ram and Mayawati are foregrounded here, are part of the pantheon. So this format is same more that there has to be a pantheon, but then the specifics change. And again, this space for mohalla icons to be accommodated here. And then another one in which Kanshi Ram is featured, but Mayawati is not featured. So if you zoom into this, pantheon, you get to know more about the local political dynamics. Now this is a photograph of another shop outside the Chaitya-bhumi which sells ephemera and other collectibles on Buddha, Ambedkar, Phule, and others. This is a small venture, and this is small venture. But now you also have e-commerce platforms which cater exclusively to the demand for Ambedkar ephemera, exclusively, right? So there are these new entrepreneurial ventures which are fulfilling the demand which the mainstream platforms like Amazon or Flipkart are unable to. They also list a few things, but not as much as these people do. So from this small shop to this e-commerce, but still small platforms, to a new engagement. So this is a screen grab from the series Made in Heaven, episode 5. A heart skipped a beat, in which the protagonist insists that she would get married in the Buddhist way. But once you subcontract your wedding planner, they have to think big. So Buddhist wedding is reimagined in a different way. The Buddhist weddings are meant to keep things simple and to make sure that people are not crushed under the burden of expenses. But this, I guess, is an example of you can do Buddhist wedding for 5,000, but let me tell you how to do Buddhist wedding 5 crore rupees. So let me do it for 5 crores. So you can do it for 5,000, but let me teach you a new way of doing it. It was a lavish set, right? And so from this very intimate wedding invitation in which Ambedkar features, where the groom himself designed the wedding card, to this wedding subcontracted to wedding planner, even the fictitious wedding planner, you see a very different engagement with him, Ambedkar. Ambedkar is not just a the backdrop there. Ambedkar is present in almost every step of the wedding, but here Ambedkar is just a aesthetic backdrop. So you've got commercialization of intimate experiences, intimate spaces. I'll just step out for a while and we'll look at a couple of other panels. We have 4 April pages of calendar: Hindi, Marathi, English, mainstream Hindu, Buddhist, secular employees union, and you see the same month. You see Ambedkar in all of them, but there's a different imagination of Ambedkar in each one of them. So each one of them is interpreting Ambedkar in its own way. Right? There's another set of 4 calendar, images of calendar of different months, in which you see, in which you have, for instance, in this one it says Uddane Rajya Choda, which is Buddha left the kingdom, abandoned his kingdom. Ashoka abandoned warfare. Jyotiba Phule abandoned his home, and Baba Sahib abandoned faith. Right, so those 4 panels here, and this, as I mentioned earlier, is inscribed with Dalit history in almost every other box, and that map over there combines the train and flight, plane journeys there. So the overall purpose of the exhibition was to bring together all the ephemeral exchanges under a single roof. I mean, these are things which we encounter for 5 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes in different points of our lives. And I thought I just put together all of them under one place, and then you realize that, well, I do encounter these gentlemen more often than I would have thought otherwise. The question is that, is it leading to a deeper engagement? Are these frequent, even if fleeting engagements, leading to a more deeper engagement? Are these frequent and even the fleeting engagements leading to a reconsideration of our own assumptions and beliefs? Right? Is it leading to a more, conversation between people? Is it leading to something? So these are questions which I am trying to answer through this exhibition, and see if and this exhibition is also an invitation to all of us to be aware that history is not only in the National Archive or Nehru Memorial Museum. It is all around us. It's in the everyday. Contemporary history, we should not wait to write the contemporary history and say 30 years later the government is going to declassify things, and only then contemporary history will start. The contemporary history starts now. I mean, that can also be done, but it's also important to look at the everyday, because this everyday will not be there forever with us, right? So I think it's so each one of you can look at the everyday, I believe, after this exhibition from through a new lens. I'll now stop here. Thanks a lot, but please, feel free to ask questions if you have any.
Bring it there, and there are ephemeral evidence, displays you could actually add there.
Yeah.
Will be useful.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So
I'll do that.
Exactly what the
See,
meaning of those
the in 1980s, it began in late 80s, and this where they said, we want harmony. Yeah, so the existing structure stays as it is, but to ensure that the relationship of the constituents of the existing social structure is harmonious. Whereas Ambedkar wanted a structural transformation of it. He didn't want just a peaceful coexistence or harmony. I mean, he wanted peace. He was a constitutionalist, right? He was always for peaceful ways of resulting. But still, he wanted a structural transformation. He didn't want status quo to be perpetuated under euphemisms. The fact that that they chose to re-christen his birthday as Samrasta Divas, right? And the fact that that this boarding pass says uh, samajik samrasta ki or towards social harmony, that suggests that the state is trying. I mean, has a particular way of looking at things, but but because there are a lot of activist challenges to it, so that view is not uncontested, right? And I'm glad sir brought it up. I mean, just that it slipped my mind that I should have actually carried that view in the outro itself.
Samarasta is retaining the caste system
Yes,
and the hierarchy of the caste system.
exactly. Yeah,
Samata was actually annihilation of caste.
the caste, right? Structural transformation versus peaceful coexistence within the existing structures. That is there's a key, there's a very crucial difference between the two, right? But this is how the state repurposes things. It appropriates bases and de-radicalizes people, social activists. And in fact, the very widespread circulation of Ambedkar ephemera at times carries the risk of de-radicalization as well. But Mahatma Gandhi now does not have any. I mean, people should be afraid of Mahatma Gandhi in this age of consumerism and this harm to ecosystem. But now nobody fears Mahatma Gandhi. He's everywhere. He's in my pocket, in my notes. He's there everywhere. So there's this risk of over circulation of Ambedkar leading to de-radicalization of him. That also has to be kept in mind. But I still believe that I'm still hopeful that this growing circulation will lead to a deeper and more meaningful engagement with him. Yes.
When you're looking at the Ambedkar Katha, you
Yeah.
mentioned that only two 20th century figures had featured,
No, three actually. Yeah, sorry, three.
had featured on the thing. So what actually,
Before him.
yeah, so what actually prompted Ambedkar over everybody else in that
Yes.
period of time?
It's a complex question. We don't have a clear answer because they don't. I mean, we don't have access to the editorial discussions. But I guess see, Amar Chit Katha was into nation building in a way, right? So I guess they would have sensed that you just cannot talk about the Indian nation at that point of time without bringing in Ambedkar. So Ambedkar was so they and then they call him Baba Sahib Ambedkar. So my guess is, and this is just a guess, and this is also the time when BSP and other Dalit assertions are almost beginning right at that time. I mean, they're not yet clearly evident, but a little later they'll become evident. So I guess it would have been shaped. I mean, this choice would have been shaped by all these changing political circumstances, and also by the need to include a crucial figure who's not in the official pantheon, but they believe would be. In their judgment, which was very important at that point of time. Yeah.
Just to follow across, other than the calendars where it must be one community or a company issuing them,
Company.
do we see that in case of Ambedkar Katha or even the Air India boarding pass or any of that?
Air India boarding pass was sponsored. The advertisement was sponsored by the Ministry of Social Welfare and Development and Empowerment. But Amar Chit Katha, the editor was Pai. So, and then it changed hands, but they continue to reprint the earlier ones as well. So you could say that this is an upper caste imagination of Ambedkar's biography, or upper caste approach to Ambedkar's biography. But there are people who worked on, formally on the Amar Katha series, and they would perhaps be slightly better placed to answer. But I guess it can. The Amar Katha project would become clear if you compare it with Tulika's The Boy Who Dared, who asked, who asked why, right? Compare just the first two pages of Tulika and Amarchit Katha, and you would see the stark differences in the project. So Amarchit Katha is very clear nation building project with a cultural nationalist within a cultural nationalist framework, which is very clear on the first page itself. With Tulika, it's a children's book and inspirational children's book, but which raises questions to the figure of Ambedkar, right? So, Samar Chitkara surely, whether it represents the views of a particular community of caste, I guess you mean, is very difficult to say because the same caste is found in different political formations, ideologies, but it surely represents a cultural nationalist and upper caste perspective for sure.
Social engineering types, building that
In a way,
far there, like he's distant enough from the Congress, like mainstream, like space,
yeah.
but he also allows them to co-opt and like build that social engineering, that majority.
In fact, in 2000, when the government, the Vajpayee government, decided to bring out a new special definitive series, it had until then special definitives began 1976, 76 to almost 1990. It had almost, it had always Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. 2000, when they decided to bring out a new definitive series, they brought a special definitive series. I'm sorry, they replaced Mahatma Gandhi and Nehru with Subhas Bose, Sardar Patel, and Dr. Ambedkar. Right? In 2000, again, when the actual stamp on Ambedkar came in 2001, but the series began in the year 2000. In 2000, the 50th anniversary of the Republic, when the government brought out a very nice stamp on that occasion, the stamp featured Mahatma Gandhi, a sketch of Mahatma Gandhi, and the cachet featured Ambedkar. Now, this was the place usually on such occasion Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru featured together, right? So, but on this particular thing, when you remove Jawaharlal Nehru, who else to bring in? So, you bring in Ambedkar. So that part, of the ruling parties, whether BJP and Congress, they try to appropriate the others. Try to appropriate the other space, but by using icons which are for instance not for instance Ambedkar for a long time was not really in the good books of the ruling parties. They thought we'll include them. But when Congress comes to power, it also counters BJP by bringing in icons which are not in the good books of BJP. So there's this seesaw between the two parties, national parties, and so therefore you see that kind of approach to Ambedkar where you may not have an icon of your own who can fill that space. So then Ambedkar comes in to fill in, step into that. But now be that as it may, it was even that was the rationale. At the end of the day, Ambedkar being a special definitive means that crores of stamps of Ambedkar were printed and distributed among 150 plus thousand post offices across the country. So Ambedkar's image circulated on a hitherto unparalleled scale across the country. Right? I've seen letters mailed from the Burma border bearing the stamp of Ambedkar. So even if the state might have a cynical motive in accommodating icons, but the fact that the circulation increases has an impact of sorts. Any other question? Yeah, please, sir.
Ambedkar influence in the south is not so much as in the north.
If you see some of the recent Tamil movies, Ambedkar is very prominently featured. Ranjit is, I guess, a very important contributor to this. But even otherwise, if you think of it, the South, especially if you speak of Tamil Nadu per se, has had a longer tradition of social justice movement. So Ambedkar, when he began, the social justice movement in Tamil Nadu was already little. I mean, had already had a decade or so of its own life. It had its own concerns because the local context is very different. And see, for Ambedkar was an anti-Sanskrit in a way, or but the South, social justice movements had that, had because they thought that Sanskrit and other things are an imposition. So therefore, their context was very different, and the Tamil social justice movements began a little before it began Maharashtra or I mean, even if you begin with Pratibha Phule, they're different contexts. So yeah, I mean, this is not like a state or a place which didn't have a social justice icon of its own. So then Ambedkar comes in. They had their own, pantheon.
Periyar, all this.
Periyar, right? So I mean, TMP came a little later, but Periyar and others were there. So I think it is, and they had in fact. So therefore, I don't see it as a lack of interest in Ambedkar. Just that the context meant that they already had I mean, a pantheon, a mobilization in place, which did not depend on Ambedkar's appeal. See, Ambedkar played a major role in mobilizing people across the country. If you look at coastal Andhra in 1940, early 40s, when he became member of the Viceroy's Council, he toured through that area, right? Now, so there, Ambedkar and people still remember his visit. But, and in fact, in 2017, 2020, I guess, they commemorated 75 years of Ambedkar's visit by bringing out special covers from each of the towns he had been to. And each of the special covers had a very local image of Ambedkar in the community. But but for the, but Tamil Nadu did not depend on Ambedkar to expand the social justice movement, right? So therefore, that is. But if you look at the contemporary Tamil movies, whether it is Jai Bhim or Kala, I think of Rajnikant, Kabali is no, but Kala Sarpata Parampara, right? So all of them, you feature Ambedkar as well. And in fact, so there's a strong community of people who would associate very intensely with Ambedkar. And then this is the complexity of India. I mean, Kerala has its own different route to social justice. It has a very different, even though it is adjoining Tamil Nadu, it has a very different historical approach to social justice, right? Where communist parties and Maharaja and so many others have played a very important role. Congress, every party for that matter, I guess. So therefore, we'll need to. We cannot have a singular imagination of anything in this country. It is so diverse.